All right, guys. So Geraldo Rivera and Greg Gutfeld threw down on the issue of abortion. It got really tense at the end. So let me play this for you. There's a bunch of fluff in the middle from the other hosts, but I'll just show you the relevant parts. You got Geraldo talks about the Roe versus Wade decision from the Supreme Court, and then Gutfeld tries to fire back at the end of it. Let's take a look.
I think that, first of all, Republicans make a mistake when they emphasize the crime of the leak itself over the impact of what the decision would entail.
True, that's just a BS dodge from the conservatives who don't want to grapple with the fact that their position on this is really unpopular, so they're trying to obfuscate and deflect and change the conversation to something where they feel like they can gin up some fake outrage.
For the women, and I think that emotion, however you think of those particular personalities, that is legit. This is more problematic, I think. And Judge, I think you'd agree with me. What this shows, because it goes both ways, what this shows is that the Senate confirmation process by which a nominee is interrogated by both parties and give their reasons why they are fit to be on the high court is absolutely deeply flawed. Why? Because these nominees lie. Wow. They go before the Senate of the United States. They swear that they're going to be judicious and good, shepherds of the court and its impartiality and the importance it has in American society, and that the stare decisis, that the precedent of these cases, well established, 30 years, 40 years, 49 years, that is something that the Supreme Court honors, and then they turn around the minute they get in the high court, they make a decision that is so dramatically opposed to what they said during the confirmation hearings. Shame on them. Shame on Gorsuch. Shame on Coney Barrett. Shame on Kavanaugh. They knew when they were swearing to those senators or in the conversations in the Senate offices that they were going to vote to reverse or overthrow Roe v. Wade. They knew it, and they lied about it, and I don't know.
So, yeah, what he's referring to here is during their hearings to determine whether or not they're going to be on the Supreme Court, their confirmation hearings, Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and Kavanaugh all said things that were relatively conclusive about Roe versus Wade, where they said, yeah, it's the precedent, it's stare decisis, it's the law of the land, it's settled law, and they were, you could argue, like, on a technicality that perhaps they didn't lie because they're just restating the fact that it is the current law of the land, but they certainly left the taste in everybody's mouth that, they take precedent seriously, and basically it shouldn't be overruled. And the fact of the matter is, and you guys aren't going to be surprised to hear this, but when you have these hearings for somebody to become a Supreme Court justice, they lie, because they all have the same standard answers that they go to about, like, my job is not to be political. My job is to just interpret the law as written and uphold the Constitution. And the fact of the matter is, everything is political by definition. And your biases are going to inform how you interpret the Constitution. And so if people were being honest, they would just go in front of the court and give their actual political opinions, which would influence their judicial opinions. But they don't do that. And so we have this, like, BS kabuki theater that goes on where lying is expected. And the only thing that's more annoying than Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett lying is that you have a bunch of, like, sucker senators who are genuinely shocked and chagrined that there's gambling going on at this establishment. Like, they were like, oh, they lied to us. And it's like, well, yeah, of course they fucking lied to you. Of course they lied to you.
How you fix that? I don't know how you can repair when the most sacred office in the land, the High Court of the United States, is peopled by politicians.
If I was accused...
That's correct. So just understand that. Literally everything is political. When people try to act like we're above politics, that is not possible. Court decisions are inherently political. So it's just a total BS dodge. Anyway, so now let's jump ahead to Gutfeld, because he sort of goes in after Geraldo, and then Geraldo snaps. Let's take a look.
Or the break. But this is why pro-lifers win, because they can state their case so plainly. Yeah. You ask somebody why they're pro-life, they will say, because abortion takes a life, and we believe life is sacred. You can disagree with that, but you can't disagree with the simplicity of it, right? But the problem with the pro-choicers is that they don't have the balls to state their case plainly. Just say...
I think that's bullshit. All the language around being pro-choice, around being pro-abortion, is about freedom and bodily autonomy. So now, look, I will grant him that it is true that among the base on the right that is pro-life, they also have a simple argument. They say, hey, as soon as the sperm meets the egg, there's a third person in the room. So, there's a life that's been created, even though, granted, it's primitive and very early on, it is still a life, therefore they think it has a soul. There are a lot of, religious implications to it. But it is a simple notion. We'll just draw a clean line and say, from second number one, it counts as a life, because it has a soul. So that is simple, but he's being disingenuous when he says that the argument on the pro-choice side isn't straightforward. Of course it's straightforward. Now, I would love it if we actually could get into the nuances and complexities of the conversation, and the pro-choice people didn't strawman the pro-life people, and the pro-life people didn't strawman the pro-choice people. But Greg Gutfeld is doing exactly that here in pretending that, they don't even have a simple argument. Well, of course they do.
I prefer freedom over fetuses. Don't sit here and come up with all of these other things like it's going to be interracial marriage next.
My body, my choice. How much simpler?
Okay. Greg Gutfeld is an idiot. The reason why people are saying, hey, maybe it's going to be interracial marriage next, is because the logic espoused in the opinion, the majority opinion of the court to overturn Roe, is the same logic that could be used to overturn interracial marriage. Now, I don't know if it'll go as far as overturning interracial marriage, but I think it is likely they would overturn gay marriage, because gay marriage we got relatively recently. Interracial marriage has somewhat recently, but it's been, decades and decades. And I don't know, that would be a bridge too far, probably even for the Supreme Court. But if they apply the same logic that they're applying in Roe, yeah, you could axe gay marriage, interracial marriage, sodomy laws, physician-assisted suicide. Because, the argument was, these aren't rights that are deep-rooted in our history. That was the argument. So in other words, they're saying, well, the Supreme Court is reading too much into the Constitution and not taking it literally and doing a modern interpretation of the language. And it's under that modern interpretation of the language of, equal protection under the law that we've decided gay people have a right to get married. But the founders didn't intend that. The founders didn't intend for gay people to get married because they didn't have gay marriage at the time. Nobody thought about it. Nobody could ever imagine it at the time. So if you're being an originalist and you're saying it's whatever the founders intended, well, then guess what? The founders didn't intend gay marriage. They didn't intend interracial marriage. They didn't intend to have legalized sodomy or whatever. So it's by the exact same logic that they're using to overturn Roe, they could use that logic to overturn interracial marriage, gay marriage. They bring back sodomy laws, etc., etc. So I don't know what he's being really disingenuous by acting like, oh, this is a crazy thing that people are saying is going to happen. It's the same logic that they applied in this case applied to other cases historically.
Can you get?
Let me finish. You already did your ad hominem. We were talking about.
Now, I don't know about you guys. It didn't strike me that Geraldo Rivera's take was particularly vociferous or vitriolic. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld is straw manning everybody who's pro-choice, and he's telling Geraldo, you already had your chance to do your ad hominem.
Yeah, you insulted a few people there. We talked about this. People are more concerned about what they lose than what they will gain, because you don't have to imagine loss. All you got to do is talk to somebody who lost a child, but you can't. You don't have to imagine it, and it's there forever. A pro-choice mom can look at her adorable 2-year-old and think my life would be nothing without her in 2022. In 2017, when she was young and single and didn't have a kid, she could only imagine the loss of her freedom, right? So that's the issue. The issue here is that...
That's a really dumb argument. What's the point here? The point is that, like, every woman in all circumstances across the board will fundamentally want to have the baby at some point. Is that the argument? Hey, there's some women who maybe at one point were pro-choice, but now we're pro-life or had a kid, and so they can't imagine aborting, and so their opinion is the only opinion that matters? I mean, it's just, like, it's not even anecdotal. It doesn't even hit the bar of anecdotal. It's, like, below anecdotal.
People need to imagine, right? They can't step back and see how pro-choice arguments are driven by refusal to imagine what that baby could be. But then
but Greg, and you know what? Let me pull up some statistics on this for you, just so you understand. Although most abortions take place early in the pregnancy, 11% of women obtain an abortion. 11% of women who obtain an abortion do so after the first trimester, at 13 weeks after the last menstrual period or later. Okay, so this means 89% of abortions happen before 13 weeks. 89%. 13 weeks is very, very early. So you're talking about before viability. It's a pregestation fetus. There's no nervous system, so there's no pain. They try to, like, all their commentary stems from this idea, this notion that, like, you're always just killing a baby, full stop. This is obviously something that's way more complex than that. And there's so many more layers of nuance to it. And they refuse to engage honestly with the issue. And then, by the way, look at this. Slightly more than 1% of abortions are performed at 21 weeks or later. Slightly more. Okay, so let's say it's 2%, right? 98% of abortions are before 21 weeks. 98%. So this notion of, like, oh, it's late, a lot of late term is going on, or the implication that all these abortions are late term, it's not true. There's even an abortion pill. I don't know if you guys know that you take early on. And it's not the morning after pill. There's actually abortion pills. And it's for very early on. Like, their entire argument is built on this facade that you're dealing with, babies a day before they come out of the womb. When in reality, in many instances, we're talking about gametes and zygotes. So it's just, engage honestly with this. Engage honestly with this.
That baby bees, then suddenly it changes, right? And then they have to create reasons. They have to create all these reasons to be pro-choice, rather than just be honest.
The reason is, before a certain line in the pregnancy, you are not dealing with a baby. You're not. It hasn't developed to that point yet. You're not even dealing with a developed fetus. You're dealing with gametes and zygotes and pregestation fetuses and pre-viability fetuses, and no nervous system is developed yet. Now, you can swat aside all that nuance and say, no, life starts at conception. But if we're keeping it real here, it is a pile of goo at that point. It has not developed yet. So again, war on nuance is what's required to make these arguments. And honestly, at the root of it, in many instances, is just a religious fundamentalism. Now, Gutfeld is not religious, so I don't know why he's carrying water for this notion. But it's a fundamentally religious idea that life starts at conception. And the idea is a soul exists at conception. And that, there's no reason to believe that. So the people who are making a pro-choice argument, it is a freedom argument. It's a, my body, my choice type argument. And it's about, you can't force me to be an incubator. Now, listen, I'm a little different from most lefties on this issue. Or actually, I don't know if that's fair to say. Maybe I have the majority position. I don't know. But I do think there's a reasonable conversation to be had later on. See, this is why I think Roe versus Wade got it right. Because Roe versus Wade doesn't say You can get an abortion at any time, no questions asked, it's fully unregulated. No, it's actually very nuanced in how they approach it. They set up the trimester standard. Later on in 1992, the Supreme Court changed that to the viability standard. But the idea is, early on in the pregnancy, the government has no say. It's your privacy. It's your choice. Then after a certain point in like the mid portion of the pregnancy, states are allowed to implement some health regulations, some guidelines to say, hey, this is allowed, but this is not allowed, etc. And then later on in the pregnancy, if states want, they could just ban late-term abortion, because late-term abortion is fundamentally different by its nature, because you are dealing with perhaps, something that could be a baby in a week. And there's like a different moral and ethical standard to bring to bear when you're at that point versus when you're early on in the pregnancy. So I actually consider myself a moderate on this issue. But again, he's not having a nuanced conversation. It's a war on, it's straw manning the position of people who are pro-choice and pretending like, why would anybody believe this, bro?
And say, yeah, it kills an unborn kid, but I prefer my freedom. That's all you got to say. You'll get so much more.
Look at that. Now, I just showed you how 98% of abortions are not late-term abortions. And 89% happen before 13 weeks, which is super early. And he's like, hey, you're killing an unborn kid, bro. He's totally unfamiliar with the statistics on this, or he's lying. Or he knows the statistics and he's lying.
Respect. The other thing that drives me crazy, now that I'm on my soapbox, is it used to be even the pro-choicers would admit that abortion was an ugly thing, but they felt it had to be a necessary evil, something that would be safe and rare. That was the argument you always heard.
Yeah.
But now, when you go anywhere on social media, it's something to celebrate, to cherish, right? The unborn, to shout.
That's baloney.
No, well,
that's baloney.
So Gutfeld actually is half right here. There was sort of a movement starting a few years ago to flip it from, the old argument used to be abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And everybody sort of agreed to that, even people who were pro-choice. Then it got to the point where there was this like loud minority fringe contingent of leftists who sort of took pride in the fact that they got an abortion and did the whole like shout my abortion thing. And so he's not wrong that faction exists. And honestly, I would sort of agree that faction is kind of idiotic, right? But it definitely, by no stretch of the imagination, is the majority of people who are pro-choice. In fact, I showed you guys the Pew poll, and the most popular opinion in the country is 58% say, quote, abortion should be legal in certain circumstances. Then it was 32% that it said it should be legal in all circumstances. And then it was only 19% that said it should be illegal in all circumstances. So the overwhelming majority position in the country is basically the Roe position, which is legal in certain circumstances. Regulated, but legal. There's a certain line where the government needs to butt out, a certain line where they could regulate it, a certain line where they could ban it if they so choose.
I'll give you evidence.
The wire hanger stuck up their privates trying to get it. What? Come on.
The unborn child.
What, come on. That's
the unborn child becomes
before Roe.
This is exactly what I expected. You bring out the old
You
coat
are
hanger.
arrogant.
Go for it, Geraldo. Come on, keep going.
Okay, Joey.
You're making a fool of yourself.
On this.
Don't you? You know something?
What?
You insulting punk.
Okay.
Oh, what? Am I your new
Joey,
Bongino?
Go. If
Joey.
you want that role.
Joey, go.
All right.
You've said
listen.
Okay. First of all, I don't know who this schmuck is here at the end. Anyway, I'm not a big Geraldo fan, but Gutfeld is just insufferable. Like, he's got this smug arrogance and certitude about himself, but his entire persona is built on, like, just relentlessly strawmanning people who disagree with him. So, I find that pathetic. I find it annoying. He's refusing to even acknowledge that the pro-choice people have a point in some respects. And that's preposterous. So, anyway, there you have it. Gutfeld and Geraldo going at it. Geraldo calling him, what was the exact quote? You insulting punk. Fun for everybody.